Hi, I'm super excited about this video. Today we're going to be painting Hydrangea. And I love Hydrangea because they come in so many beautiful colors. Some of them actually have multiple colors right in the same flower, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to be painting a mostly purple Hydrangea. And I'll leave the colors linked down in the description box on YouTube, so make sure that you check that out if you're interested. And I'm gonna get a few colors over here ready to go. So I have a couple different purples I'm going to be working with, and I'm also going to mix in a little bit of blue and green. All right, so to start out, actually I'm gonna grab this color too. Okay, to start out, I've got my size 10 round brush, and I'm using a 9x12 size piece of paper. This is my Fabriano cold press paper. And then I'm just gonna start right in the center of one of my Hydrangea. And I'm painting 4 little petals that kind of come together in the center. And I'm just gonna repeat that same kind of shape throughout. But while this is still wet, I'm just going to tap a tiny bit of the darker purple into the center and then let that dry. But I'm just gonna kind of vary the purple that I'm using every time. So that's why I have several different ones. I'm not gonna reach for the same exact color every single time I go back to paint a new little blossom. And some I'll tap in color and some I won't. But I'm not being so careful that every little petal is going to look perfect. And I kind of want them to all overlap a little bit. So you can see here, I've painted 3 and then this kind of half petal here, but it's because it's going underneath this other petal. So here, somewhere here, like where it has a little bit of white space, I'm not going to worry about that right now because sometimes you can see through and see some stems happening, or we can go back in and add more purple later. So I'm not too concerned about that. I just want to make sure that there's enough white space that it's not all like jumbling together. So now I'm going to mix in a tiny bit of blue just to change it up and give each of those kind of their own petals. You don't want them all to start to blend together because then your eye won't really know where to look. It's kind of a tedious process to paint individual flowers. You're almost painting little tiny daisies and then they're all just kind of touching. But right now we're just focusing on clumping them together. And you can see that sometimes like these 2 petals touch together, these 2 touch together, and they're all kind of bleeding together. I want that to happen. And if you don't want your whole Hydrangea to kind of blend together into this mess of bleeds, you want to make sure that you always mix in your palette over here, and you also want to make sure that after you've mixed your color, I kind of just do it as a second nature now because I'm so used to it, but I kind of tap out my brush. You can see that I'm just doing that right here. Tap, tap, tap. And that just helps get rid of any excess water that's hanging out in my brush, but I still have all that color to paint with. Okay, right about this point, I'm starting to get a nice round shape, and I want it to be circular, but I don't necessarily need it to be a perfect circle. So I'm just paying attention to where I have funny gaps. So right here, this is a really nice rounded area, so I'm not gonna add much more over here. But here on the top, I'm gonna add a little bit up there to help fill in the space. These are not gonna be full petals. They're just going to be little half petals almost, one or two here and there, to just round out the shape rather than add a whole flower like we did here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to add some leaves. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. I want it to take up more space. So let me just quickly add some more petals to make this bigger. And I'm trying to vary the color just a little bit so that it all doesn't have to match too. So I'm making sure I'm pulling a little bit of this in throughout so that it doesn't feel out of place, but I'm not too worried if everything is perfectly matching. So now our hydrangea is looking really full. And now we're going to add in some leaves and stems. So hydrangea, they have these really large, beautiful leaves. And I'm gonna mix a nice bright, rich green over here. I know for sure that this color up here is hooker's green. It's just a nice, true green. And I'm gonna make that slightly more muted by adding a little bit of red in. This color, let's see, yeah, this is alizarin crimson. So hooker's green and alizarin crimson. And I need to decide where my leaves are going. I'm gonna have them kind of come off to the side over here. So I'm just painting a little stem to act as a guide. That's gonna be the center of my leaf. And now I'm gonna quickly fill this in. And then while that's still wet, you can come in and add that texture just by using the point of your brush and kind of pulling back in toward the wet paint. I'll do that again with another leaf down here. But this time I'm gonna make the green a little bit darker. So I'm gonna add in some Payne's Gray. And a little more alizarin crimson. This was muted down quite a bit, but I want it even more. In fact, I'm gonna drop in a little bit of that deeper color just to help it tie together. Okay, so now this leaf isn't going to be looking quite as full just because it's over to the side, but I'm still going to show you that texture technique. So with my brush kind of at an angle, I'm kind of angling this, the end of my brush back toward where the center of my leaf is, and then just creating that texture. It might take a little bit of practice, but once you get the hang of it, it creates a really, really nice texture. Okay, now I'm gonna add in my stem using the same color. And Hydrangea have a thicker stem. And they also have little stems to hold all of the individual blossoms in place. So I'm gonna add kind of those in here as well. And then where I've got a little bit of white space, I'm just going to add a few little stems. Alright, now while my leaves are drying, I'm going to go back in and add some detail to my hydrangea. And I'm just taking that dark purple color. I'm just going to come in and darken just the very centers of some of these, just so it kind of helps define each of those individual flowers. I'll also use a different purple as well so that they're all not identical. Not all of them need them, but it's kind of fun to go back and add detail. And actually, now that I've kind of stepped back and looked, I can see that I actually want this to come down a little bit more here. This might be a mistake, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it, and we'll see what happens. That's kind of the nice thing about hydrangeas, because they're all individual flowers anyway, you can kind of get away with adding a little bit more later. This is one of those things too where you may need to snap a picture with your phone so that you can easily step away from it. I would just hold this up and hold it back, but because it's watercolor, I don't want it to all run down my page. And so it's helpful if you can step back, but sometimes you need to take an overhead picture with your phone or just stand up so that you can see. I've got my my camera monitor on so I can see kind of what it's looking like. All right, I'm just waiting for my leaves to dry so that I can add a little bit of detail in there. I'm just gonna go ahead and start, but you'll wanna wait for yours to dry completely just to be on the safe side. If you wanted to add detail, you definitely don't have to. You can see if I were to wait, this wouldn't be all kind of blending together. Just kind of adds a nice little texture.